All right, buckle up, everybody, because we are diving deep today. We're talking all things Trump on the campaign trail, and wow, there's a lot to unpack.
There sure is.
Yeah, from those burger-flipping photo ops to, well, so let's just say interesting comments. We are going to break it all down today.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we've got expert speaker here to help us make sense of it all. You ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, we've got Trump flipping burgers
Oh, yeah.
at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania.
Of all places.
Yeah, of all places, right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a quick handshake, a photo op. No, apparently he spent a good chunk of time there, even talking about, how much he enjoyed the work. So I'm curious to hear your take on this little publicity stunt. What do you make of it?
Well, it's interesting. When you consider the timing of it all, the context, it's pretty fascinating. This McDonald's appearance, this wasn't just like a random craving for a Big Mac. This was calculated, right? This was in response to Kamala Harris and her, frequent mention of her own experience working at McDonald's when she was younger. And it's really interesting how this mirroring tactic can be so effective, even with something as, seemingly insignificant as like a summer job.
Mm-hmm.
It allows Trump to sort of project this image of being relatable, down to earth, in touch with, the average American, all while kind of subtly trying to undermine her narrative,
You're right. It's like he's trying to one-up her on this. Even going so far as to joke that, he worked like 15 minutes more at McDonald's than she did.
Right.
And this isn't the first time that we've seen him, use this tactic to try to discredit his opponents. Remember when he went after Ted Cruz's eligibility to even be president based on where his father was born?
Exactly.
Or when he made those claims about, like, Nikki Haley's parents and them not being citizens when she was born.
Yeah. It's a pattern we've seen time and time again, right? This attempt to kind of undermine his opponents by going after their past, going after their family, and often without any substantial evidence.
Right.
It's a recurring theme in his political playbook, for sure. And I think it resonates with a certain segment of voters who are drawn to that, outsider image and his willingness to challenge anyone and anything that they see as the establishment.
Yeah, definitely a way to grab headlines, control the narrative.
Yeah.
Speaking of grabbing headlines, let's move on to Trump's rally in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Where he shared this very interesting anecdote about the late golfer Arnold Palmer's anatomy.
Right.
And, well, it was definitely a choice.
There's a choice.
I'm curious to hear your take on this. So is this just Trump being Trump, or does this kind of behavior, raise concerns, about his judgment, especially given that he's aiming for the highest office again?
Well, I think it's a perfect example of how he uses humor, and often it's crude, often inappropriate, as a way to connect with his base. And this story, it was guaranteed to get attention, to get people talking, and to even get a laugh out of some people. But it also raises questions about, what is considered acceptable behavior for a presidential candidate? Is this really how a president or someone who wants to be president again should be acting?
Right. It's like a calculated risk because some people, they love it, they eat it up, they think it's refreshing, that he's not afraid to tell it like it is.
Right.
But then others, and I'm guessing this is a pretty sizable portion of the electorate, they're cringing right now. They're thinking this is crass, this is disrespectful, and it's not very presidential.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's not even the most shocking thing he said at that rally.
Oh, right.
He made some comments about Kamala Harris at that same rally, and they were pretty inflammatory, to put it mildly.
Yeah, using language that a lot of people would consider, I think, deeply offensive and misogynistic.
It's one thing to make a joke, that, even if it's in poor taste, but this felt different.
It did.
And then you have people like Mike Johnson, who's a House representative, going on CNN's State of the Union and trying to just brush it off like, oh, Trump's just having some fun.
Right.
Okay, come on. They're trying to normalize this kind of behavior.
That's exactly what's happening. It's a clear strategy.
Right.
By framing it as entertainment or writing it off as, oh, these were just off-the-cuff remarks, they're hoping to just kind of soften the impact of what he said, hoping to prevent these comments from really resonating with voters. Their message is basically, don't take it seriously. It's just Trump being Trump.
But, at what point does that strategy backfire? Because this whole say anything approach, it just seems incredibly risky, especially given, some of the other things he said at that rally. Like he brought up the enemy within again and how he'd use the military against them.
Yeah.
But this time, he actually got specific. He named Adam Schiff and the Pelosi's as part of that enemy. That's not just fun anymore. That's pretty chilling.
No, it is. And it's definitely not the first time either. When a former president, someone who held that office, talks about using the military against political opponents, I mean, it evokes some dangerous historical parallels, you know? We're talking about things like McCarthyism, where political opponents were branded as enemies of the state. It's incredibly dangerous, this kind of rhetoric. And the fact that, he doubled down on these comments when he was directly challenged by Jake Tapper on CNN, well, I think it suggests that it's not just an off-the-cuff remark. Like, this is something he believes.
It's a pattern we've seen before, too. Remember, like, back during a debate when he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by.
Right.
I mean, those words, they have real-world consequences, especially for the people that he's targeting, right?
Yeah.
It creates this climate of fear. And I got to say, it's scary.
It is, and you're absolutely right to bring that up because words matter, especially when they're spoken by someone in a position of power, And the media plays a role in all of this too because, by amplifying these statements, they're grappling with this responsibility to inform the public, but then at the same time, potentially normalizing dangerous rhetoric.
It's a tough line to walk because on one hand, you want to hold those in power accountable for what they're saying, for what they're doing, but on the other, you don't want to give a platform to dangerous ideologies or incite violence.
It's a delicate balance for sure, and it requires careful consideration from the media and a really nuanced approach. I mean, they need to provide context, analysis, and push back against any misinformation while, at the same time remaining objective in their reporting. It really is. And it's not just about the immediate impact of these statements, but, the broader normalization of this kind of rhetoric in our entire political discourse.
It's exhausting, honestly.
Yes.
And it's everywhere. You turn on the news and it's, pundits yelling at each other, politicians dodging questions, this just constant barrage of negativity.
Yeah.
It's like we're living in this like perpetual state of outrage.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know who or what to believe anymore.
It's understandable to feel overwhelmed. I mean, we are constantly being bombarded with information from all sides.
Right, yeah.
And it's very, very easy to get caught in these echo chambers and filter bubbles where we're only seeing and hearing what we already believe. But it's exactly in this climate right now that it's more crucial than ever to be, critical consumers of the information that we are taking in.
You're preaching to the choir here. I mean, I think that's a big part of why people, tune into this deep dive.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
try to get a more nuanced perspective, to hear from experts, people who can cut through all the noise and help us make sense of it all.
Absolutely. And in this particular case, I mean, with all of these reactions and responses swirling around Trump's behavior on the campaign trail, I think it really just drives home the point that he is such a deeply polarizing figure.
Yeah, you have Jake Tapper on CNN calling his behavior, unstable, questioning his mental fitness even. And then you have like Howard Kurtz over on Fox News downplaying everything, trying to almost normalize it. It's like they're living in two completely different realities.
Right. And those are just two voices in what is really this massive, chorus. You have people like Al Sharpton who are framing this election as like a battle for the soul of the nation.
Right.
Really highlighting the incredibly high stakes involved here. And then you've got celebrities like Lizzo and Usher who are performing at Harris rallies, bringing, their star power to her campaign. And then on the flip side, you have someone like Elon Musk actively campaigning for Trump.
It's a stark contrast, for sure. So with all of these different viewpoints, all of these reactions, I mean, what do you think it tells us about, just the state of political discourse right now? It seems like we're more divided than ever.
I think you're right to point that out. There's definitely this really deep sense of unease, uncertainty in our political landscape. I mean, traditional norms and expectations, I think those have been, totally upended at this point. And we're still grappling with how to even have productive conversations about politics when there's just, so much disagreement, so much distrust.
Yeah, it's like we're speaking two different languages almost.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find that common ground. And, with the election just a few weeks away, it's hard to see how we bridge that divide.
It's a critical time, that's for sure. And I think, the outcome of this election is going to have really significant implications, not just for the next 4 years, but for the future of the country.
Absolutely. And with the polls showing this tight race, I mean, every rally, every comment, every tweet, it all has the potential to sway voters.
Right. And with all of this talk about, election integrity and potential disputes over the results, I think there's this palpable sense of anxiety. Like, what's actually going to happen after the election? Will we see a peaceful transfer of power, or are we going to see even more chaos, even more division?
The million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not even just about the presidential election.
Hmm.
I mean, we have these crucial Senate races happening all over the country
Right.
with control of Congress potentially hanging in the balance. So, I mean, the stakes, they really could be higher.
Absolutely. These elections are going to have far-reaching consequences, impacting everything from healthcare to climate change,
Yeah.
even foreign policy.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's enough to make your head spin, for sure. But amidst all the chaos, all the uncertainty, I think it's important to remember that we do still have the power to shape the future, both through our individual actions and our collective choices.
That's a powerful message, and it's one that I think we need to hear right now. So as we're navigating these really turbulent times, it's important to remember that we're not just passive observers here. We have agency, and we have a responsibility to be informed, to be engaged, and to be thoughtful about the choices that we make.
Exactly. This isn't just a spectator sport, right? We're all in this together. We all have a role to play in shaping the future that we want to see. So as we head into these final weeks before the election, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on, what are some key takeaways that you hope listeners will walk away with from this deep dive into Trump's campaign trail behavior?
Well, I think at its core, this deep dive into Donald Trump's campaign trail antics, it's really this microcosm of the broader political landscape. We're seeing those same divisions, the same anxieties, the same struggles to find that common ground. But amidst all of that, I hope that listeners will take away, this really important reminder that they are not powerless. We can choose to, engage in these conversations respectfully, even when we disagree. We can seek out different perspectives. We can challenge our own biases, and we can all show up and make our voices heard.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Even amidst all the chaos, we do have agency. We're not just along for the ride.
Yeah.
We can steer the course a little bit.
Absolutely. And it all starts with, just being informed, being engaged, paying attention to what's happening, and not just the headlines, like really trying to understand those deeper currents that are shaping everything. And don't be afraid to ask tough questions.
Yeah.
Of yourself, of, those in power.
It's about being, an active participant in all of this, not just somebody watching from the sidelines.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, this look at Trump on the campaign trail, I mean, what's sticking with you? What are you going to be thinking about as we head towards Election Day?
I think for me, it's that reminder that words have power. The rhetoric that we use, the stories that we tell, they matter. They shape how we see a world, what we believe, and ultimately they can even determine, the direction of our entire country. It's kind of a heavy thought,
Yeah.
but it's also empowering because it means that we can choose differently. We have that power.
That's a great place to leave it. Choose differently. It starts with all of us. And, it starts with being informed, being engaged, being thoughtful about all those choices that we're making, big and small. Well, there you have it. We explored the latest from the campaign trail. We talked about the strategies behind all the spectacle. And of course, we unpacked some of the anxieties and maybe a few hopes surrounding this pivotal election. We've seen how one candidate's actions and their words can really have this ripple effect across, the entire political landscape, exposing those deep divisions, but also highlighting, I think, our shared responsibility to create a better future. So as you move forward, we hope that you will take the insights from this deep dive and, don't just observe this election, participate, ask those tough questions, engage in those conversations respectfully, and most importantly, cast your vote. The future is ours to create.